Welcome back. 2025, things are crazier than ever. Birth rate crisis, dating is kind of a total mess right now, and life has never been more complicated or maybe difficult for men. And here we got another reaction for you by Diary of CEO. The real reason life is brutally unfair for men. Let's check it out.
We now have this digital world that we can live our lives in as a distraction from the real world. And there's now more confusion than ever over what it is to be a man and the role of a man in and then we look at the stats around suicidality. And I think in Europe, the biggest killer of men under the age of 45 is themselves currently.
Mhm.
Is the shifting idea of what it is to be a man having an impact on people's sense of self and their purpose?
100%. So there's a crisis that's going on in men, and people think that this is new, but I don't think it's new. It's always been there. So if you look at, like, even 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, it's sad that we have to label things as a crisis, honestly. Of course, on the heels of birth rate crisis and dating crisis, right? Amongst other things. Um, Unfortunately, we live in a time and a society that doesn't necessarily value the male species for some reason. It tends to prop up only the other gender and not this gender, and so yeah, things get overlooked, and then unexplained things happen, and here we are calling it a crisis. So
80% of suicides are still going to be men. So historically, men have been killing themselves for like 100 years, and no one's been paying attention. We're just noticing now because the problem seems to be getting worse. So
that's pretty bad. If over 100 years, the rates of suicide towards men have been such a higher rate than all other demographics, but only now we're paying attention. That says a lot about society.
there's a couple of things that are really interesting to understand. So one is that if we look at what technology is doing to our brains, the first thing that it's doing is it is externalizing our attention. So if you look back, like, let's say 1,000 years ago, as human beings, we spent a lot more time with ourselves. So let's say that you and I go out hunting. And then let's say you shoot an arrow at a deer and you miss. And then I shoot an arrow at a deer and I hit. So in this moment, I'm superior to you. And then we pick up the deer and we're carrying it back. And then we have about 2 or 3 hours to take that emotional insult and we kind of process it. We just give our mind space to process it, which it
Hunting is a very masculine quality, and I think we need to make that more commonplace now. Despite the vegans and whomever save the animals, of course we care about animals, but yeah, technology, we discuss that a lot. Social media has completely changed us as people, us as human beings, society as a whole, and most people aren't going to be going out hunting and killing, and certainly not for survival, right? You can just order DoorDash. You can just hit the Amazon button, right? Men don't have to go hunting anymore because in the past you had to for your survival's sake. So have to look at times and things differently.
does automatically. Now, if you look at what happens in people's days, they don't actually have any time to process what happens to them because we are so constantly distracted by external things. So I don't know if you're like this, but I was in this point where I was idiotically efficient. So I would wake up in the morning and I would listen to a podcast while I'm like doing my exercise or whatever. And then even when I'm cooking, I'm listening to a lecture. And then like when I'm walking to the train, I have earbuds in and I'm listening to a lecture there.
That's describes me pretty well today. I become just like this prototypical podcast guy, listening to them, having my AirPods on kind of all the time. It's at a point now that I don't feel good unless I'm listening to a podcast or maybe a music. Um, but I kind of need something in my ear to fill silence now. I guess I've gotten so used to that over the years, but yeah, I can relate to that.
On the train, I'm reading. I wanted my life to be completely efficient. I didn't want to waste a single moment.
I literally listen to the news in the shower.
Right? So we don't want to waste time. And so if you really think about it, where's the attention of your mind? Your mind is pointed outside of you. And so then what happens is once we do not pay attention to ourselves, we lose sight of our internal signals. literally in the same way that if you raise a child in a dark cave, the photoreceptors in their eyes won't develop. They will atrophy. So anything that the mind does not get access to will start to atrophy. If I don't practice Spanish, I'm going to forget Spanish. The brain is a very efficient organ. So as we externalize our attention, we lose sight.
If you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah, including your sight, including your senses, social skills, right? Networking, whatever. Exercise for sure. Muscle atrophy. Just go a week without any exercise. You will see how fast your strength levels and kind of fitness levels drop. I've been getting in the habit of doing push-ups on a daily basis for years now, and just missing a couple of days automatically see the difficulty rise again. So very true.
Of our internal signals. We don't know who we are anymore. And now if I don't know who I am, how do I figure out who I'm supposed to be? I pay attention to the outside. Where
Identity is very important, and I believe that's on an individual level. Honestly, I that question I don't believe is posed for society as a whole, because society consists of all of us, um, but all of us are individuals, right? And so what that means to the individual is case by case. It is very important to find out who we are, but honestly, many people don't even know that even as they grow through life and get older, because uh, who they are could be defined by the time or the situation or uh, external outcomes and factors like he mentions, which I can agree to. So, yeah, we may not entirely know who we are, but I believe that's more of an individual case, not society as a whole.
the answers? They're on the outside. So this person is talking about masculinity. This person is talking about what it means to be a man. This person is talking about what it means to be a man. And now, since I don't have any internal source of information, I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a man from the outside world. And this is when men get truly fucked, because what it means.
I don't I don't think you're messed up if you look for what it means to be a man from the outside world. I mean, okay, millennial here, anyone who grew up in the 90s, thank God, like myself, you would watch, if your dad was cool, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, John Claude Van Damme, Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, like the pinnacle of perceived Hollywood masculinity, right? That's still pretty damn masculine, strongest, courageous, etc. And I didn't know it at the time, but that actually instills upon me and others like kind of like a internal view of what it means to be strong and masculine as you get older, especially if you look up to, an Arnold Schwarzenegger or Superman or whatever. So I I partially agree, but I partially disagree that I think in general we tend to look externally at examples of what consists of something we consider strong, smart, fit, masculine, feminine, etc. It doesn't all come from within or from your family. So, yeah.
Means to be a man, we are getting all kinds of mixed signals. So on the one hand, it means being physically fit. On the other hand, it means being a provider. On one hand, it means having sex with as many women as you can find. On the other hand, it means having sex with just one woman and being a really solid man and being a good father. And then there's also people telling us that being a man means that you're shit, right? That you're toxic, that your testosterone level makes you violent, that you're evil, that you're privileged, that there's a patriarchy, all this kind of stuff. So we're getting all this information from the outside about what it means to be a man. And so there are all kinds of interesting ramifications of this. So
That's because we live in a femme-centric society that literally props up all of female kind and makes men seem as lesser in comparison, which makes no sense. You have to be both. You have to have two parts to a whole, right? Society has to be built up by both. It takes two to tango. Yeah, and politically speaking, yes, there's way too much conversation about what it means to be a man or whatever and what's considered toxic. That word is extremely cliche and overused today. But it is getting ridiculous when like a regular guy just can't even do a simple gesture of a kind thing like, excuse me, you dropped this, or pardon me, can I help you carry that, or whatever. Like, people label such regular gestures and uh, as toxic and so forth. That's kind of ridiculous, and that's a symptom of our society. Okay, so that's more of a question of society. And if you're getting mixed signals, it's on the individual to take in those signals and kind of deliberate what it means for them and interpret what it means for them. Okay, you could say there is no right or wrong answers in a specific definition, right? Because people define it differently, and I can see how people define it in all the ways he described. However, what it means to the individual is up to the individual. Again,
Men in today's society are not allowed to complain. So if you complain and you're a successful person or a privileged person, everyone is going to think you're arrogant. Everyone is going to think, oh my God, who's this fucking guy? This guy doesn't know what my life is like. How does he have any right to complain? And even your mind will tell you this. You'll look at these people and you'll be like, yeah, I don't have a right to complain. But now we need to stop.
it's not about having the right to complain. You can complain, but to me, complaining too much is weakness, especially for a male. I'll be honest. And when you complain, you also don't have an attitude of gratitude, and you're not able to see the positive and the silver lining in situations. Yes, things suck sometimes. Yes, life sucks sometimes. Yes, stress happens and heartbreak happens. Yes. However, when the emotions subside, right? Life goes on. You got things to do, got work to do, whatever. You got exercise to do. So it continues anyway. So there's no permanent state, right? And also, males really can't get away with complaining all the time and not being perceived as weak or kind of like a loser. If I To me, if you're a male and you're an adult and you're trying to accomplish better things, if you're always complaining and never trying to focus on improving your life and self-worth, you don't really deserve success because you're not focusing on what it takes to the steps it takes to get to a success that you haven't accomplished yet. That complaining is not going to get you there.
For a second and think about what it does to your psychology when you as a human being are not allowed to articulate your suffering. I've worked with people who've grown up in abusive households where children will say to their parents, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm hurting." And the parent smacks them across the face. "How dare you? You're so lucky. You don't realize the sacrifices I make for you." It's traumatizing to the child when they say, "I am suffering," and no one listens. This is what
I hope to be a father one day, and by no means am I not going to love and support my child in every way possible that I can as a father. But yes, listening to your children, even though I'm not a parent yet, very important. Having them vent, having them express themselves, important. But keeping it in perspective for them to understand that it's not the end of the world, literally, right? And like worse things can happen, and try to look at the bright side. I think that's important, and it's not to undermine how they're feeling. Now, did I grow up in a way that it wasn't necessarily okay to express oneself and whatever? Yeah, you could say that, but that's a cultural thing. And when you're South Asian or different culture like that, if you're Asian or whatever, you may relate, but that wasn't norm in your household on average. Okay? Um, so now that's a whole nother topic, generational trauma, etc., especially within subcultures and so forth. But um, having love and expressing love is one thing, but also guiding and leading your child to become the best person they can be in the future is also goes hand in hand. So I think both is important, but that no one's saying to undermine your child's perceived suffering or anything like that.
we're doing to the generation of men. People are saying, I am suffering. For 100 years, men have been killing themselves. 80% of suicides are men. The most dangerous thing for a man under 45 is themselves. And these people have been literally killing themselves because no one has been listening to them. So in the same way that you grow up with as a child in a household that's abusive, where no one takes you seriously, no one listens to your suffering, and now we even have successful men who are not allowed to complain. So the cycle.
People, please take your mental health seriously. I am in no way, shape, or form a therapist or a licensed therapist by any means, but mental health matters. Please seek help if you need, if you're feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders. And it is very sad state of reality that many men don't feel heard or they're brushed aside. I know, and I live by myself besides a dog. So it could even compound if I let it. Okay, when you live by yourself, negative thoughts and depression and negative feelings can compound if you let it, unless you process it and work through it through a variety of ways, such as meditation, journaling. I highly recommend journaling. Um, Going out for walks, exercise, diet, eat right, playing with your pets, dog and cat, whoever, socializing with people, etc. Right, breath work. They all help with mental health. 100%. I can vouch for that. So please take your mental health seriously.
Logical impact is the same. Anytime you have a human being who is suffering in some way and they cannot find connection with another human being, they cannot find compassion with another human being, that person is going to feel isolated. And if you look at the statistics on suicide, it's very interesting. So the number one thing that correlates with male suicide is not depression, and this is super scary. There's one study I saw recently that suggests that 50% of men who kill themselves have no history or evidence of mental illness. And this, I believe the statistic in my clinical practice because I know what depression looks like.
Okay, like I said, not a licensed therapist, but when you constantly think negative thoughts in your head and you're by yourself, that's called rumination, I believe, and it only can spiral out of control and could possibly lead to really bad negative physical damage, unless you process it in some healthy way, or definitely seek professional therapy help, right? So yeah, I didn't mean to pause on like that, but yeah, I understand. I've been living alone, but I live nearby family though. They're not far from me, and I have a dog, and I walk every day and exercise and eat right and so forth as much as I can. Those things really help, to be honest. But if you're constantly ruminating negative thoughts, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to work through that somehow. I would journal it out. It's too much of a burden to constantly think negatively about life, because that could lead to disastrous results, like he's suggesting.
I know what bipolar disorder looks like, and half the men that I've worked with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, they're not their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living. They're looking at things and objectively realizing that there's no way out of this situation. So they turn to suicide. So I know it's kind of like a very controversial statement, but I think that's what my clinical practice has shown, and there's some research to even back that up. So if we sort of look at what's going on with men, we're sort of they have nowhere to turn to, and the number one thing that correlates with it is not mental illness, but is a sense of thwarted belongingness. So this is kind of like multivariate regression analysis. But basically, what happens is what causes people to kill themselves is they try to connect with others and they get rejected. So it's specifically a very specific research term called thwarted belongingness.
Okay. Yes, that's very painful, and yes, harsh truths. Friends come and go. Okay, especially as you get older. Best friends forever is a nice moniker, but I don't believe for the most part that's real for the majority of people. And it does suck to not feel belonging with others, but at the same time, a person is free to socialize with whomever they wish and go to where they're welcome and where they feel welcome. Okay, if you're not getting it from certain circles or family members, right? And also, rejection is part of life, whether you like it or not. Look, if Michael Jordan, to use a sports analogy, Michael Jordan lost games and missed many shots, but he's still the greatest player ever, besides LeBron. Steph Curry, greatest shooter ever. Obviously, he missed shots. He doesn't hit 100% and never will. So even though that's missing shots, I'm saying that you have to shoot your shot, and part of that means getting rejected. Okay, and that means for friendship, for love, affection, for jobs, right? Uh, for business ideas, that's part of life. There's just no way around it. So the earlier that we accept that rejection is just part of life, and every no kind of stands for next opportunity, the easier it is to just get through it and focus on the next one. So, but I do understand how that's going to affect a large amount of people when they can't feel that and they can't get over it.
So I try to belong to a group, and that group or multiple groups usually will thwart my attempts to join the tribe, to join the community. And this is what actually correlates a lot with suicidality. So what's going on with men right now is that we really don't allow them to suffer, because then you're not manly. And we're so externalized with our attention that we're not connecting with ourselves. And so we're looking to other people to tell us what it means to be a man. But that may or may not work for you, right? That may have been what worked for them. So then we kind of get into this problem where we're disconnected from ourselves. And then, like, the world doesn't accept us. We're not allowed to suffer. And that's what creates the problem.
I do agree. We do need to know oneself. Okay, we need to know ourselves. We need to know what is our hobbies, what is our goals, what do we want to achieve in life, who is our friends, what is our values. Okay, what do you stand up for, right? It is true. Values should be defined within oneself. I agree. Not really a conversation from the mainstream, I would say, throughout time, but very important to the oneself. And it could be your career, right? It could be building a startup. It could be starting a channel, whatever. Um, there has to be a pursuit and a purpose and a goal, right? For a person to overcome. And then, yeah, it's a very extreme example to use suicide here. And sorry if that gets dinged, but it's the extreme example of what happens when a large portion of society suffers from these symptoms that he mentioned, right? Feeling left out, having no purpose, getting rejected constantly, no sense of belonging, okay? Um, what else? Relying on external factors to tell you who and what you are, etc. Even though that's part of the equation, if you ask me, but I digress. So yeah, men go through a lot, man. And fellas, please find yourself a strong brotherhood. Okay, very important. You gotta have friends. I think I read somewhere that men who are doing the best mentally, they have a couple of nights or so of social outings with their buddies, right? Men are simple creatures. You don't need me to tell you that. Video games, movies, YouTube, exercise, hiking, dogs, whatever. We're not complicated, okay? I'm pretty sure vast majority are not complicated. So, but it's very important to have a sense of belonging and kind of a social net. Having a team. Life is too complicated. Sorry, life is too difficult to go through it alone. It really is. It really does take a village, and no team, no one can be successful without a team. Honestly, so I highly recommend that to the men out there.
What is the remedy to this?
So I think the first thing is we must reconnect with ourselves, right? So when you're kind of saying, like, why does everyone think, oh, I need to, like, achieve this, I need to make this money and things like that? Where did you learn that you should do all that? You learned all that from the outside.
Instagram.
Instagram, right? So we get fed all of these ideas, because if you look at all these influencers, what are they doing? They're never crying. They're smiling. Some of them will even pay very attractive women to take pictures with them.
Well, some
right?
of them are crying, but they're...
By the way, Instagram is basically a lie, like a lot of things we see on social media. Okay, Instagram is the highlight reels of people that you don't know, and we compare ourselves at our lowest, like our worst, to someone's best. So it's a really stupid comparison game, right? It doesn't matter. Some guy has 1 million followers and is completely jacked, ripped, and on the island, surrounded by beautiful women or something. Like, what it took for that guy to get there, which a lot of it is fake, by the way. Like he said, you can rent expensive cars. You can take pictures of fake jets. Okay, you can find cheap travel to get to nice photogenic destinations, right? You can pay people to pretend like they're interested to take pictures and videos with. Okay, I think we know that. So it's mostly fake. Nobody shares their failures or their depression or their really rough times during life. Okay, so don't take Instagram seriously. It's just other people's highlight reels. Okay, and all we do is compare it to our worst.
crying and uploading it for ulterior motives, right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of them are genuinely suffering too. But then it's also like, I mean, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. So one thing is, like, people say that we don't allow men to be emotional nowadays, but people say, oh, men are allowed to cry. So this is something that I experienced even in my marriage, where we allow men to cry, but we don't allow men to be angry. But why are men no longer allowed to be angry? You just think about it for a second.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was we allow men to be angry but not to cry. But anyway, when he says we, he means society, okay? And it's a loaded topic, but we're all human being, okay? Male, female, young, old, okay? White, black, it doesn't matter. You're a human, just like me. You're human. You bleed inside. Your heart beats. You pumps blood. You have a skeletal system, brain functionality. You're human, okay? Part of being human means you're gonna feel all the emotions, including sadness and anger and depression at times. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. It does not matter what gender you are. It does not matter how old you are. It does not matter how successful you are or unsuccessful. You're human like the rest of us, and therefore feeling feelings has got to be not only okay but acceptable and never bashed on. It's really stupid, right? I mean, does anyone ever tell a female that you're being too emotional and that resulting in a positive reaction? Hell no. It's never happened. No husband's gonna do that. He knows what that's gonna entail. So I think we're gonna stop right here. Great video. Another one by Diary of a CEO by amazing host Stephen Bartlett. Please check him out. So life is tough. I make these videos. I think the message is important that society, we really need to take men seriously in this modern era, right? Because we tend to live in some gender specific time frame right now, but everyone should be valued. Okay, all genders, all sexes. Well, I believe there's only two, but whatever if you don't. Genders, age, religion, background. We should value each person and not devalue anyone. Okay, so anyway, hope you got value from this episode. Speaking of, if you do, please hit the like button, share, subscribe for more, and remember, it's just some perspective.